Greetings, space cadets and space-time travelers. Today I'll be talking more about the concept of freedom. Really free will, but I don't want to use that word. And I'll be especially talking to Adam Mallour, who thinks that I should be the one that defines why we have no freedom. When I believe instead that the default option is no freedom, and he should be the one that says why we do. Why? Because our current scientific view, if we accept this, is that we can define the universe, that we can confine the universe, that we could remove all possible wiggle room, so that in essence our universe is either completely deterministic or to some extent or completely acausal. Now, if you accept one or the other, a mixture of these, as our current scientific worldview does, specifically quantum mechanics being acausal, you end up with the following. If everything is deterministic, there is no choice, there is no option, there is no wiggle room, everything is the way it is. Okay? Now this is probably not true because of quantum mechanics in our universe, but may be true if there is a multiverse with extra grain. Now, if you have something that's acausal, you have wiggle room in the sense that there are different possible paths. But the reason why one path is taken over another doesn't exist, because acausal means no cause. And then I would say that you have no freedom in that. So if the universe is composed of deterministic or acausal or some combination of those two, then there's no room for freedom. There's no room for, if we want to use the Leiden word, free will. So that's my essential argument. Now, if you believe that many world hypothesis is probable, which I do, that would lead to a deterministic multiverse. And the way that works is that in quantum mechanics, there are certain potentialities. That is the uncollapsed wave function, where many, many things could come into being. They haven't come into being yet. They're just probabilities. They're just possibilities. And in many worlds, all of those possibilities come to fruition in different universes. Now, the burden you have to explain is it doesn't really make sense to have all these universes where every permutation, every possibility exists. Well, I love the way it explains stuff, but it's not testable in the same way that superstring isn't testable, but it's a lovely explanation and I like it a lot. That would lead to the horrific outcome that we have no freedom whatsoever, and if that were true, it would be pretty much absolute, without any wiggle room in the universe, in the multiverse, and in the thinking behind that type of universe, multiverse. But I decided, because Adam Mallour needs to have an argument why we would have freedom. To me, that you have to do that, because there's just, if you say nothing, well, why can't we? Why can't we? Well, I just told you why, and if you don't get it, I hate you! Not really. That song, I love that song. I love a girl in a pipe. Wow. And he's got good cartoons, but they're freaky, though. They're kind of freaky. Some of them are freaky, but they're very well drawn, and, but they're freaky. Anyway, so I decided to come up with an argument because I have nothing fucking better to do. I'm going to have lunch with Bill in a little bit. But I do have something better to do. I could be hopping in the shower. It's time almost, but I thought I'd make this video. So here's what I've decided to do. How do we have freedom? Because to me it seems very, very hard. So I've decided to make something up which can't be tested, at least as far as we know, just like superstring can't be tested. You know, superstring says that essentially there is an infinite number of possible universes, which means that there are duplicates of our universe that are exact, and there's an infinite number of them. Now that's mind-boggling, that's very strange, but the math is really cool. On many worlds, the math is very primitive. Not many people have worked on it. It may be the majority view of theoretical physicists, but there's not a lot of work done into it because it doesn't seem like a very productive area. Whereas superstring, the math is beautiful, and people like that, and they're going into that. But now I'm going to make up some other stuff which isn't testable, and has absolutely no mathematics associated with it. So this is my argument for Adam Mallour. Excuse me for making the argument for you. And essentially what I'll be doing is saying, this is the only way I can think of that sounds semi-reasonable. And I think it's ludicrous, so don't listen to a word I say, that we could have freedom. So I think the only way to have freedom, and I think Roger Penrose kind of figured this out too when he wrote The Emperor's New Mind, by using microtubules and having all these microtubules interact by synchronous neuronal firing, and they would all form a kind of a coherent system in which there would be superposition of possibilities. And he said that this is essentially how consciousness comes into being. So I'm stealing some from him, but he stole from other people, so it's cool, you know. But, so the deal is this. I'm going to say, just say it, because, you know, I can do that what consciousness is that consciousness is all the unrealized potentialities and possibilities in the universe. Consciousness is the wave function of the universe. And that our minds are essentially bundles of consciousness that have been concentrated by particular configurations of matter so that they pick up this consciousness of the universe, which is everywhere, which is all of those unrealized possibilities, and amplifies them. Furthermore, if you look at our universe as not being a multiverse, but being a single universe, that takes on one of an almost infinite number of paths, where those paths would be the paths of many worlds. But only one is taken on. And if the events that occur as a result of quantum mechanics are not acausal, but are in some way involved with consciousness in such a way that they would appear to be acausal, because we have no way of differentiating between one path in the many worlds as opposed to another. They all work the same, and there's no reason why one is better than the other. You can assign probabilities to them, but you can't exclude them. So what that means is, I think that you can't have freedom, you can't have free will, unless the universe is not deterministic, unless it's not acausal. It has to be something else. Now that's a big stretch, because there is no vocabulary for that. But if consciousness is not only part of the universe, but required, in other words, consciousness is those undefined quantum mechanical properties defined in the Schrodinger equation psi squared, those probabilities, and just one of them come into existence. And if consciousness can act upon itself in a way that appears acausal, but is not, and it's certainly possible we could never detect that, never even test it, perhaps, then it seems like free will, freedom, might be possible. Now, let me make an argument against this. I was just at Publix shopping, and there was two guys arguing, and the older guy over there with a big gray beard and stuff, with a very gruff voice, after the other guy had sort of finished, he interrupted. He says, "Listen to me carefully. Shut up!" I thought it was funny. But, you know, you could say, well, this is a bunch of hooey. Well, actually, I think it's a bunch of hooey. But this is the best I can do. This is the best I can do, Adam Lohr, to come up with an idea that would support the notion that we could have freedom. I just can't imagine it. I can't just say, oh, we just have it, you know. But let me just talk briefly about the thing about the testability of these. You know, a classic example of something that was thought for centuries to be untestable was the concept of an atom. Now, the idea, not Adam Lohr, an atom, A-T-O-M. But let's say we just work in like the 18th, 19th, 20th century. Within that reign, atoms, of course, from the Greeks, they had those. I forgot the name of the Greeks, whatever. But they just kind of made it up. But science said it appears to be that there is an atom. You know, it seems like they've got the electrons, the protons, the nucleus, and Rutherford, and all those other people came up with stuff and all. And people say, well, we're never going to prove there's an atom. There's no way you could ever test it. And anybody that even talks about that, you know, should be like, their pants should be pulled down. And they should be spanked by a nasty dominatrix. And unless they were into that sort of thing, and then they should be like lowered into a boiling vat of oil slowly. Unless they were into that, and then they should be left off with a let off with a stern warning. But anyway, there are a lot of things like that where, we think that they're untestable, so they're outside the realm of science. Well, we should talk about these things. And anyway, so I realize this has been extremely coherent and understandable presentation about all this, and it will resonate with your consciousness and your lack of free will, and the observer in you will observe you having some kind of a reaction to it, probably what the fuck. And anyway, Happy New Year!